You're listening to Sister Stargazers, celestial and terrestrial observations and advice from two real-life sisters. Welcome, fellow stargazers. Your sisters are in the house. Hello, Jude.
Hello, Sarah. This is so awesome.
Yes, once again, we're together. Episode 35 this week. We're looking at Sunday, May 8th through Saturday, May 14th. I just love that I can say May. Here we are in May.
Yes.
But a quiet week, you said. Not too much, but let's dig into it.
Well, it's an eclipse portal.
Ooh.
So we had our eclipse of the sun, which really no one in the Northern Hemisphere saw. It was all Western South America and parts of the Antarctic were privy to this eclipse. But nonetheless, it was a solar eclipse of the sun. So whatever we see, new beginnings, are on offer to us.
Yeah.
And then we have a lunar eclipse on the 16th. So we can talk about this time period between those two eclipses.
Yes.
It's a first quarter moon.
Okay.
We come on Mother's Day, moon in Leo, a very fun, expressive day with the moon in Leo, very sociable. So happy Mother's Day, everyone. It should be a fun day. And that's later in the day, we have, really late in the day, 8 p.m., the moon moves into alignment with a square to the sun. So that's our first quarter moon. The moon is in Leo, the sun is in Taurus.
Okay.
And that gives us an opportunity to reflect. It also challenges us to come to terms with some of what we might have been hoping for, or that what might have been revealed, or what we might have seen at the new moon time, what we might have put into our wish list at the new moon time. It's a kind of a time of sorting things out. It's also a time to rededicate those wishes or those intentions from the new moon. What do you want to do in this new cycle? And the eclipses make that cycle very much an opening, like a big moment of change, if you want to take it. So this first quarter moon is asking you, well, let's refine your ideas a little bit. Let's see how we might structure things. Let's see how we might express them a little clearer. Let's see how they align with your values. So sun in Taurus, moon in Leo, how might you fulfill that expression or that intention? What obstacles are you running into? What are you thinking about? It's really a check-in time. So that kind of sets the tone for the week. And then we have Tuesday, we have just two major things happening that are defining this latter part of the spring as we move into and towards the solstice in June.
Yeah.
So we have Mercury Retrograde begins on Tuesday, May 10th. And this is a 3-week period of reflection. Again, that whole idea of assessment.
Yeah.
But Mercury is retrograde in its own sign. So it starts out retrograde in Gemini, which it rules. So reviewing emails, reviewing contracts, reviewing notes, reviewing ideas, reviewing communication, making sure your files are in order, knowing where your files are is going to be really important. Conversations, revisiting terms of agreement. These are all part of what might come up as Mercury starts to turn retrograde. And the time around the 10th, so anywhere between Sunday the 8th and that whole week of May between the 8th and the 14th, it could be what's called a Mercury storm, where Mercury stations. So it starts to slow down. Right. It gets really, really slow. It looks like it's stopped in the sky from where we are on Earth. And then on Tuesday the 10th, it actually starts to look like it's going backwards. It doesn't actually go backwards. It's an illusion in terms of the way that the orbit of the Earth overtakes the orbit of Mercury. So it looks like it's going back over where it was in the sky.
Right.
And it will go back into Taurus. So it's in the early degrees of Gemini. On the 8th, it's at 4 degrees Gemini, but it will back up to 26 degrees Taurus. So it will go back almost to where Sedna is.
Okay.
At 28 degrees Taurus. So Mercury has just come through this part of the sky. It's moved all the way through Taurus in the last month.
Yes.
And now it's in Gemini. And on the 10th, it will look like it's starting to retrace its steps. It's going back to retrieve something that was not clear, something that was missing, something that was lost, something that was not clear. So you can also sometimes find things that you've misplaced when Mercury is retrograde. They just magically turn up, or you realize, oh, I left that there, and then it got covered by something else, and then a coat got put on top of it or whatever. But because Mercury is retrograding in its own sign of Gemini, it's really going to be about your thinking, your communication, things that you've agreed on before. You want to go back and make sure that those things are actually really what you want to have happen.
What part of this aspect is a Mercury storm?
Sorry, I got sidetracked.
I'm waiting for the storm.
The Mercury storm piece is when Mercury stations.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, it doesn't know, you don't know if it's going to go forward or if it's going to go back. So it starts to look like it's going backwards on the 10th, but it doesn't really pick up speed. So that whole 2 days before, 2 days after the actual retrograde moment, it's almost like it's this confusion. Like, am I going? Am I coming? Am I staying? Am I leaving? It's just...
Okay.
Did I lose it? Did I find it? Where is it? And so it's that whole kind of stormy kind of confusion.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
I didn't mean to go off topic. But I'm excited. The thing that I wanted to talk about was that Mercury goes back to meet up with Sedna.
Yeah, let's talk about Sedna. We've mentioned her way back. I can post below which episode we talked about Sedna in January, but let's recap Sedna and then why Mercury with her is so significant.
So Sedna is the furthest object out in space that we've identified at this point in time. It's got a generational orbit. It's just out there so far. It's part of the Kepler belt. Those objects that are like a belt in space that are in the surrounding our solar system. Yeah. And we haven't really discovered them until the late 90s. They've been looking and thinking something was out there, but they really couldn't. Yeah. They didn't know. So with more sophisticated technology and more dedication to actually looking, they started to discover these objects that were orbiting in this cluster, this belt, which is it literally is a belt, like a ring around our solar system. And it's just out beyond Neptune. Yeah. And this particular object, Sedna, was discovered in 2003 and officially named in 2004 and declared a dwarf planet.
Yeah. Talk about the mythology of Sedna.
So Sedna is an Inuit goddess, and she was the daughter of a man who cared for her, but ultimately abandoned her. She was very beautiful, but remained unsatisfied with available suitors. She didn't, like this one. She didn't like that one. Her father was frustrated with her. And at some point, she was given in marriage to a handsome man who proved to be not who he said he was. So he wasn't a human. He was a nature god, kind of like a Pan figure who's been kind of in quotes, a raven man. He had no home for her. Yeah. He had no warm hearth. No, nothing really to offer her. Yeah. So she was kind of abandoned by her father. She was kind of abandoned to this suitor that really didn't turn out to be who he said he was and was kind of abusive. And so the father comes to rescue Sedna, but actually, so the father has Sedna in the boat. The Raven Man comes after them, but the father then abandons Sedna again by throwing her overboard into the sea.
To save himself.
Yes. So she tries to get back into the boat, in this churning ocean that the Raven Man has whipped up with his flapping of wings.
Wow.
And she has her fingers cut off by her father, who is trying to just get away and save himself.
Right.
So she falls into the ocean. Her fingers become the animals of the sea, like the seals and the dolphins and the whales.
Yeah.
So even though her children kind of came out of her distress, she has remained basically abandoned at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
And she's still there. It's this creation myth with the natural world, like how the humans, and specifically how the male archetypal, patriarchal, father-dominated culture has abandoned the feminine.
Okay.
It's a heavy story. It's not like a happy ever after kind of thing.
But Mercury's going retrograde to go back. Is it fair to say Mercury's going back to get a lesson from Sedna, to go back and retrieve some of that? What's the significance of Mercury going back towards Sedna at the 28 degrees of Taurus?
I think to tell her story, to reintroduce her to the world.
Awesome.
I think this is a really critical time to understand what our values are. Taurus, Sedna in Taurus, to rescue the parts of ourselves that have been abandoned, that might be where we really want to go, the pieces of ourselves that we really do treasure, but have basically given up on because of trying to make it in a patriarchal world, or trying to go after the trappings of success, which has been held out as being what is success.
Yeah.
I think that this is part of what Mercury retracing from Gemini, going back into Taurus, is saying, how do you define success, and how are you going to find those parts of yourself that you have abandoned to just languish in the bottom of the sea?
Well, let me add into this with a card that I pulled today from the Positive Thought deck by Louise Hay. The first side of it says, "It is safe to look within." And then the back side of the card, "As I move through the layers of other people's opinions and beliefs, I see within myself a magnificent being, wise and beautiful. I love what I see in me."
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the story of Sedna.
Oh, it's horrible. It's just, I really don't like to even tell it because it's so very sad, but it's also very poignant because all of these qualities of beauty and sovereignty. Like you get the choice to say no.
Right. Yes.
You get the choice. And then daddy doesn't like it, or someone in the culture doesn't like it,
Someone else's beliefs and opinions. So you sacrifice those parts of yourself that are most sovereign or that you are most special to you. And then you end up at the bottom of the ocean. So our goal to not end up at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, we have to retrieve.
Yes.
We have to retrieve. I think that's part of what this Mercury retrograde is going to be about in this eclipse season.
All right.
Because it's going back. And the other piece that's really interesting about this chart in this time, okay, because it's not just about this week, but it's kind of like this 2 weeks between the eclipse on the 30th of April and the eclipse coming up on the 16th. It's that 2-week time period where the sun is making a conjunction to the North Node.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the North Node is within 6 degrees of Sedna.
Oh, okay.
As the sun is moving into position here, beginning of the week, May 8th, the sun's at 17 degrees Taurus, just coming out of mid-Taurus, Beltane, the spring, the fecundity of spring. Everything now in the Northern Hemisphere is opening.
Yeah.
The juices, what is that Dylan Thomas poem?
It's the force that through the green fuse drives the flower. It's the opening line of a poem that he wrote. I'll link to it in our chat below, in the comments below. But that's the first line of this poem by Dylan Thomas. The force that through the green fuse drives the flower.
Yeah, and that's what's happening right now as we look around. Like there is a force that's coming out of the ground, out of the earth, into all of the stems and cellular structures and fibers of all of the plant life, and up through our stems and fibers of our muscles. I mean, we are not immune to this, while it's all going on around us. So that force is coming up through the earth, coming down from the heavens and spiraling forth into the world. That's spring.
Yes, yes.
And we have the sun, north node, Sedna, and then Mercury. So a conversation with ourselves about where we belong, what are our deepest longings, and then retrieving those to move forward in June. Once we've gone through the lunar eclipse, which is going to help us to release the things that are holding us back. Not just physical things, but the actual beliefs that are holding us back. And also the deep emotional wounds that are holding us back, because that moon, that lunation, that lunar eclipse will be in Scorpio. So the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio is going to be about releasing, transforming, change on a deep emotional level. So this is not an easy, I think I'll do this today and then come back to this tomorrow. No, this is like, I think I will stop doing this and I will never go back to doing it ever again.
Very good.
And I'm going to move and shift my focus in this direction to be more in line with who I am authentically in my heart.
Yes.
That's what's happening in these 2 weeks.
Fair enough. Well, as we get through the week after this Mercury retrograde, are there just a couple other aspects we wanted to mention?
Yeah. So on the 10th, later in the day, around 8 o'clock, Jupiter, who's been in Pisces, who's met up with Venus, met up with Neptune, got its like spiritual high, right?
Yeah.
Jupiter's now moving into Aries.
Powerful.
So Jupiter moving into Aries is really a very big shifting of focus from this dreamy, misty, expansive Piscean energy of the collective into this very focused fire.
Yeah.
It wants to start working on something. It wants to get a plan in place. It wants to get things done.
Yeah.
To really take stock, review, set your sights, set your intentions, and let that wave of Jupiter coming into Aries lift you.
Yep.
And then the sun sextile Neptune, Taurus, let's shine our light. Let's consider our worth. And Neptune is like, what about all those dreams you had? And quite literally, these might be dreams, like real dreams about being in other places, doing other things, like in your dream state. And they could also be like waking dreams. But Neptune is about that. It's about envisioning as we move into this total eclipse of the moon.
That's a total lunar eclipse that's happening on that 16th?
Yeah.
Wow. Are we going to be able to see it in the Northern Hemisphere?
This eclipse will be visible throughout all of North America, Greenland, the Atlantic Ocean, and parts of Western Europe and Western Africa.
Fantastic. So this week of the 8th through the 14th is sort of a clearing and preparation to that lunar eclipse.
Exactly. And that card you mentioned.
Yes. Would you be speaking of the 10 of Wands?
I would be, because that's also so relevant.
Yes, right.
Sarah was like, I pulled these cards. I have no idea what they mean. They just are so disconnected. And as she's saying that, I'm like, no, they're totally right.
Yeah. Well, 10 of Wands, it's, I have two. I have the Rider-Waite, which is someone like gathering these big, tall, quarter staves, and sort of, is that person going to be able to carry them all? And the other deck I have is the Crow deck, and it's this crow trying to take flight while carrying this bundle of wands. And the general message is the same. Like, what are you carrying with you? Do you need to be carrying all of that? Are there some things you can release, some things you can let go symbolically, physically, quite literally? What is it you are burdening yourself with unnecessarily so that you can move on?
Yeah. And that's very well put. It can be emotional. It can be physical. It can be ideas, beliefs, right? Responsibilities that aren't yours, debt, whatever it is.
Put it in order. Get rid of it. Get ready to move on. Yeah.
Stuff that you really don't need, you shouldn't have. It doesn't matter if you don't have them anymore.
Bigger things to focus on.
Yeah. More authentic.
Yes. Well, fantastic. That will do it for this episode, I think. Fellow stargazers, if you've got a comment, something you want to share, please email us at connect@sisterstargazers.com. Thank you for hitting the subscribe and like buttons on the platforms where you're finding us. It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Jude, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Sister Stargazers. Let us know what worked for you this week. Find us on Facebook and post a comment at Sister Stargazers.